Welcome to lecture number 86, historical topic 8.3, the Red Scare. The theme is American and national identity. There is one learning objective, and that is explain the causes and effects of the Red Scare after World War II. And the one key concept is split up into two parts. The first says, Americans debated policies and methods designed to expose suspected communists within the United States. The Red Scare was a period after World War II in which there was an increased concern about communist infiltration and subversion, mainly at home. It's important to note that this is the second Red Scare. The first one happened after World War I. Government officials tried to expose suspected communists within the US by first adopting policies that would actively investigate whether there were communists currently working in the government, and if found, they could be removed from their posts. President Truman was pushed by the new Republican majority in Congress to set up loyalty review boards from 1947 to 1950. This gave the federal government the power to investigate its own employees and make sure that they were not part of any communist groups or any subversive groups similar to communists. During this period, new employees had to take a loyalty oath when they were first hired, saying that they were going to work for the federal government and promise that they were not communists. It created a culture of fear and mistrust within the federal government, and any allegation that one was a communist could trigger an investigation and ruin one's career. The process towed a fine line in infringing on civil liberties. The government, in a way, was discriminating in employment based on political ideology and beliefs. It limited one's freedom of speech if what they said or openly supported could cost them their job. The Smith Act, or the Alien Registration Act, made it illegal to advocate the overthrow of the government or to be a member of an organization that advocated the same. Therefore, anyone who joined the Communist Party was automatically in violation of the Smith Act because the Communist Party advocated for a communist government in the United States. This again calls into question its constitutionality and the infringement of the freedom of speech and association. The Supreme Court case Dennis et al. Versus the United States upheld the act in a 6-2 decision. The court cited the wording of Schenck versus the U.S., saying that some speech presents a clear and present danger, but it made the distinction that merely teaching about the philosophies of communism was okay. Finally, the 1950 Internal Security Act, or McCarran Act, outlawed any support for the establishment of totalitarian governments. It restricts the movement of communists, and it even authorizes detention camps for people who have been apprehended through the Internal Security Act. The act established the Subversive Activities Control Board, which investigated and prosecuted individuals with suspected communist ties. The act remained in effect until the 1970s. The propaganda from this period shows that the US truly feared the idea that communism would take hold in the United States. The House of Representatives also got involved in the communist hunting action. The House Un-American Activities Committee was active in trying to investigate everyone and anyone that may have ties to communism. They were investigating the Boy Scouts, the Army, Hollywood actors, and anyone who did not testify would be shunned by the rest of their industry. This was common especially in the entertainment industry. Any actors or directors that did not go to Congress and answer the questions that the representatives had would be blacklisted. This meant that they would not be hired to do any future films. One of the people who stood up against the House Un-American Activities Committee was the playwright Arthur Miller. He was quite famous during his lifetime and was even briefly married to Marilyn Monroe. Miller wrote the play The Crucible in 1953 as an allegory for what was going on. It was a thinly veiled comparison between the 1950s to the 1600s Salem witch trials, in which women in the Massachusetts Bay Colony were being accused of being witches and killed for it without evidence. Senator Joseph McCarthy was the congressman who was active in the other half of the Capitol. He claimed to have lists of known communists who infiltrated the U.S. government. The evidence that he claimed he had was always ever-changing. He rarely cited the same number of communists that were on his list, and he never gave any solid or concrete evidence for why he had these suspicions on so many people. McCarthy investigated communists in the U.S. through the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. Eventually, the Army accused McCarthy of using his subcommittee and subpoena power to give preferential treatment to a former staff member. McCarthy claimed that the Army was only making these accusations because of his investigations of communists in the Army and possible security risks. Joseph McCarthy came off as a bully in the public eye as he tried to accuse people of being communist when in all likelihood they were not. Not to mention the likelihood that he was abusing his power to help people close to him. McCarthy comes out the loser in the hearings and is censured by the Senate for his behavior. Eventually, McCarthyism is used to characterize the paranoia and baseless claims and investigations of the era too. Similarly, the term witch hunt, popularized by Miller's play, grows in popularity to describe an investigation of someone on baseless charges who may be seen as posing a threat to the status quo. The Red Scare declines as the economic boom across the country continues. People start to lose interest in who's a communist and who is not. The second half of the key concept finishes with, even as both parties supported the broader strategy of containing communism. The reason why both parties continue to support, to varying degrees, the Red Scare and the search for communists is because the searchers did eventually come up with some communist spies that had infiltrated the US government or US intelligence. The most famous one that was found by the House Un-American Activities Committee was Alger Hiss. He was a State Department official and was present at the Yalta Conference with President Roosevelt. He allegedly gave Soviets documents from the US government that had official information. Representative Richard Nixon, new to the House of Representatives, was one of the people who questioned Alger Hiss. Through his testimony that he gave to Congress, he perjured himself, meaning that he lied under oath. He was convicted and jailed for that crime. Richard Nixon, because of the success of the investigation, gained popularity with the Republican Party, which led to his nomination as vice president in the 1952 election. Klaus Fuchs was an employee in the Manhattan Project, the U.S. effort to develop a nuclear weapon. He helped steal technology from the U.S. and gave it to the Soviets, the likely reason for how they were able to develop a nuclear weapon so shortly after the U.S. Finally, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg were convicted spies and executed for their crimes of giving Soviet Union U.S. intelligence secrets on technology like radar, sonar, jet engines, nuclear technology, and the list goes on. The dispute continued on whether they were actually spies or not. Their children who outlived them continued to swear that their parents were not communist spies, but when the Soviet Union fell apart in 1991, more information was released and it showed that they were in fact spies for the Soviet Union. Alright, here's the recap. The United States adopted several different policies to keep communism out of the country. The tactics of the policies were contrary to the civil liberties. A paranoid witch hunt atmosphere developed in the era of McCarthyism, and finally, the discovery of several high-profile communist spies continued to fuel the Red Scare. Thank you for watching. If you would like to watch the next lecture, you can click the video link on the screen. And if you're looking for more practice to help you on the AP exam, you can visit apushslides.com. I wish you the very best in all of your studying and look forward to seeing you back in the next lecture.